was wiped out from the stock market.
You ever notice how the slickest liars don't look nervous? They look calm, like they've already convinced themselves the lie's the truth. The real masters of deceit don't sell lies, they sell certainty. And certainty makes even the sharpest minds let their guard down. By the time you question it, the damage is already done.
Bernie Madoff. He was one of the best traders on Wall Street. He was Wall Street. Madoff served as the chairman of the Nasdaq and revolutionized the trading business. He had spent decades building his multi-billion-dollar empire until one day, the house of cards fell. At $65 billion, it was the largest Ponzi scheme the world had ever seen.
65 billion wasn't just a lot of money. It was pensions, mortgages, entire retirements wiped clean. All tied to one man's scheme. The scariest part? People probably never even saw it coming.
Bernie Madoff would go on to be the chairman of the Nasdaq in the early 90s. It was a very highly respected position, but as Wall Street was caught up in the mystic of Madoff, no one knew that behind the walls of Madoff's empire, something else was happening. Well, almost no one knew.
Crazy thing is, chairman of NASDAQ wasn't just a title, it was Wall Street's stamp of untouchable credibility. To most people, that position meant you were beyond suspicion. Being NASDAQ chairman didn't just earn him respect, it made doubt feel taboo. Nobody wants to be accusing the symbol of Wall Street. And in that hesitation, he found cover.
Harry Markopolos. He was a financial fraud investigator who back in the 90s was working as a portfolio manager at Rampart Investment Management. In 1999, his firm had caught wind that a hedge fund manager of one of their partners was consistently returning a 1 to 2% profit per month. This turned out to be the work of none other than Bernie Madoff. As Harry began reverse engineering the strategy, he had no idea that he had just stumbled across the biggest financial scam Wall Street had ever seen.
Wall Street's messy and unpredictable. Even the best traders take losses. So when someone never slips, that's not brilliant. That's when alarms should be blaring.
According to Harry, it took him 5 minutes of looking at Madoff's revenue stream to realize that things just didn't add up. Madoff's returns were too consistent. When the market went up, Madoff made a profit. And when the market went down, Madoff still made a profit. Harry Markopolos was adamant that Madoff's returns weren't real. The returns seemed to be unfazed by the market conditions.
So you mean to tell me this dude never had a red day? Like, come on, man. Even MJ missed shots. It was like swiping a credit card non-stop, but the bill never came. In real markets, losses are the bills you can't escape. If they don't show up, you know something's broken.
There was little to no fluctuation despite the market movements. Harry had two theories. Either Madoff was trading on insider information, or this was all a giant Ponzi scheme. On paper, the investor has money invested in Madoff's firm and gets a good return. In reality, the money is being siphoned into Madoff's own accounts, as well as paying off old investors to keep the lie afloat.
Markets are supposed to swing. That's just the reality. If your account balance never moves, it ain't magic, it's smoke and mirrors. In finance, the only way you dodge losses is if you're hiding a trick up your sleeve.
It almost seems too ridiculous to believe. How could this have happened on such a scale, under the nose of some of the greatest financial minds in the world? But that was the talent of Madoff. He knew how to lie and how to be convincing of it. And besides, who would dare question the man who helped build the modern Wall Street?
His whole game was built on trust. The kind so polished, it make lies look like math. By the time doubt hit, wallets were already open. Bruh, when the checks keep hitting, nobody wants to play detective. Greed makes you blind, comfort makes you quiet. That silence was Madoff's armor.
As Harry began further deconstruct Madoff's strategy, he couldn't find a single transaction by Madoff's firms on the exchange. Harry spoke with a dozen equity firms, but none of them had made any trades with Madoff. Madoff hadn't made a single trade since 1993, or perhaps even earlier.
Wall Street clears millions of trades every single day, yet Madoff left no trace for years. That's like a plane logging thousands of flights with 0 takeoffs recorded. The system itself should have screamed impossible.
In 2000, Harry Markopolos took his findings to the Securities and Exchange Commission, otherwise known as the SEC. But Harry didn't have any hard evidence against Madoff. It was just a theory and some red flags. Therefore, an investigation wasn't opened. But Harry wasn't the only one who was suspicious over Madoff. When asked about it several years later, he confirmed that hundreds of people within Wall Street had been suspicious. But when asked why none of them ever reported anything, he responded, quote, People in glass houses don't throw stones.
On Wall Street, blowing the whistle isn't noble, it's career suicide. Nobody wants to gamble their paycheck or reputation on being the lone accuser. That fear kept mouths shut, and once the silence takes hold, it multiplies. If 100 sharp minds look the other way, it stops feeling suspicious and starts feeling normal. That's how rot becomes culture.
By 2005, Markopoulos had uncovered many more red flags surrounding Madoff, and the SEC eventually opened an investigation in 2006. But Madoff had ties with the SEC, and on occasion was even called to provide advice. Madoff also knew how to get around the auditors. Testimony from former staff describe how they cooled down falsified documents in the fridge so that auditors wouldn't notice that they had been freshly printed.
Wall Street hyped him up like he was perfect, the guy who never lost. Investors ate that up and kept throwing money at him, and he couldn't back out without killing the image. That praise boxed him into a hole he couldn't climb out of.
The investigation was closed 11 months later due to a lack of evidence. And soon after, Madoff audaciously praised the SEC, saying, quote, "In today's regulatory environment, it's virtually impossible to violate the rules."
Dude, that's like robbing the bank and thanking the cops for keeping the streets safe. He wasn't just confident, he was clowning the whole system to their faces. And the wildest part, they bought it. Impossible to break the rules? Psh! He was breaking them in plain sight while saying it.
But Madoff at this time must have known that it was only a matter of time before the hypocrisy in his words would be revealed. Trillions of dollars was wiped out from the stock markets as subprime mortgages in the US tumbled the global economy. In rushes of panic, people were reining in their investments and cutting their losses.
Madoff wasn't ready for a world that wanted their money back. At the same time, a Ponzi only works when withdrawals stay light. The moment everybody tried to pull their cash, the trap collapsed on him.
Madoff knew the end was near. He knew that with no new money pumping his account and his clients asking for their original investments back, the scam would soon be over. So Madoff pulled every string to get some new cash. Bernie had created the firm Madoff Securities International, a subsidiary based in London who suspiciously had no clients.
Madoff didn't set up the London branch to expand. He set it up to buy time. It was camouflage, not growth. See, that on the spot wasn't progress. It was a mask. Folks saw expansion, but what he really built was a front to keep the lab breathing.
This fraudulent firm transferred $164 million in November. Billionaire Carl Shapiro invested $250 million at the start of December, and Madoff received another $10 million investment a few days later. Bernie Madoff had seemingly asked the whole of Wall Street for cash, dishing out a 19-page booklet detailing his new investment scheme. But it seemed that nothing was enough. The withdrawals were still more than Madoff could bring in. Investors wanted their money back.
He wasn't stacking wealth. Every fresh check was plugging an old hole. That's the trap of a Ponzi. Money recycles, trust erodes, and collapse is only delayed.
And now, the simple fact was, he didn't have the money. So, finally, Madoff decided to turn himself in. He didn't try to run or hide. He simply knew that it was the end. The game was over, and $65 billion was gone, and thousands of investors were left to pick up the pieces.
At the end, he didn't run, didn't fake another trick. He admitted it was done. For a second, it almost looked like honesty finally caught up. Whole families woke up to nothing. Retirement's gone, homes on the line, and kids' futures erased in a single day. It wasn't that the money vanished. It was trust, hope, and decades of sacrifice, all stolen at once.
Madoff had been running this scam in parallel to a legitimate side business. A business in which his sons, Mark and Andrew, worked. He told them that he planned to give out a nearly $200 million bonus to the staff 2 months early, despite the firm hemorrhaging cash amidst a global financial meltdown.
He ain't spreading the love, he was buying silence. Those payouts wasn't bonuses, they were bribes to keep the mouth shut while the ship sank. That's how shaky his empire really was.
His sons argued against it, but Madoff had no choice but to tell them exactly why it needed to be done. He told them about the Ponzi scheme, and that he was planning to turn himself in at the end of the week after the bonuses were handed out. According to his sons, this was the first that they'd ever heard about it. Fearing that they'd become accomplices in their father's crimes, they called a lawyer and turned their father in before he distributed the bonuses.
Just hearing the truth made his own kids accomplices? Like just knowing could drag you down with him? That's the trap. The moment you know it and stay quiet, you're in it too. The law doesn't care if you meant to play along. Silence writes your name on the scheme.
Madoff was later arrested at his home, then released on bail under house arrest. As Bernie Madoff and his wife Ruth sat at home on Christmas Eve, the reality of their world falling apart sunk in. The two childhood sweethearts laid down in bed and consumed a cocktail of prescription medications. On Christmas Day, the couple woke up to realize that their attempt to run away from their problems had failed. Bernie would now face life in prison.
Yo, after all that damage, he really thought he was the one owed sympathy. Nah, fam. He wasn't no victim. He was the storm. And seeing him fold like that just proved he ain't built for the pain that he caused on everybody else.
Madoff pleaded guilty and within a few months was sentenced to 150 years in prison. At age 81, he'll live out the remainder of his life there. While in prison, both of Madoff's sons had passed away. Mark committing suicide after the scandal, and Andrew dying from cancer. And as for his wife, Ruth, she no longer speaks with him. Bernie is allowed a 15-minute phone call each day, but he doesn't use it because, in his own words, he doesn't have anyone to talk to.
Truth is, a life only measured in wealth ends in emptiness. Strip away the lies, and what's left is a man alone with his silence. All that stealing bought him nothing but empty years. Since he couldn't pay back the money, he's paying it back in time.
Moral of the story, don't let greed get the best of you. It's really not worth it.